Welcome back to the CDL recap for week 3. Pretty interesting week. A lot of blowouts, some close matches, and we're going to highlight some of the storylines and things you may have missed if you didn't watch. Real quick, before we get back to breaking point, this is my team of the week for week 3. It is the same team of the week as the Breaking Point podcast did. As you can see here, Envoy, Lynn, SIB, and Scrap. If you want to see more about this type of stuff, definitely follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description. But I think these guys stood out above the rest. I think the next closest, as you can see in my honorable mentions here, was Draza. Draws definitely could have been in here over Scrap. I think it was close, but I watched Scrap absolutely crap on my LA Thieves, so I had to give him the respect for Team of the Week. But let's real quick start off by talking about the standings. Right now, only 2 teams remaining at undefeated, that being Atlanta FaZe and the New York Subliners. FaZe only having lost 3 maps so far this year, which is pretty insane. And then obviously we have the top 4 pretty much set at this point. All 4 of these teams, I believe, are guaranteed for winner's bracket at Major 1. Which is good and expected for what we're seeing. We also saw the Miami Heretics lose 2 matches this weekend and fall to 3-2, which we will talk about. And overall, very interesting to see. You got the top 4 pretty clearly defined. And then we also have 4 teams with only 1 win on the season, which is pretty crazy. Let's start off by talking. That is not what I meant to click. Let's start off by talking about the Toronto Ultra because this team looks really, really good. Despite their singular loss, which was them getting swept by the Boston Breach, if you look at their stats, every single player with a positive KD, almost all of them averaging 20 kills per 10 minutes, which is really good, especially for a guy like Insight because he's a slower AR player. But looking at these KDs, Kleenex currently leads the league in Slayer rating, and Scrap is number 2. So that's super, super crazy. And I mean, in every game mode, everyone's kind of doing their thing. Scrap somehow with a 0.66 in Search and Destroy is kind of crazy. But everyone's doing it in control. Envoy, a great control player as always. I mean, everyone's doing their job. And this team looks really, really good. Search and Destroy being their worst game mode, as you can see down here, with actually a negative win-loss, which is pretty crazy. But now let's talk about their 2 series that they played versus the Seattle Surge and the LA Thieves. This was an insane weekend. Everybody did really, really well this weekend for the Ultra Envoys. You can see here putting up the highest KD in this first series in their sweep versus the Seattle Surge. On the side of Seattle, not very good for just about anybody. Hook had the best weekend for them. But I mean, Kleenex doing his thing, Scrap doing his thing. Insight had a really good weekend as well. All of these guys could have been Team of the Week caliber players. And then if we come over to their 3-1 versus LAT, which was almost a 3-0, they lost in round 11. I was hyped watching that on the watch party. And shout out everybody who was watching the watch party this weekend. Super cool, my first watch party. On the side of Thieves, nothing to talk about. Afro went positive, I guess, which is cool. And then on the side of the Ultra, I mean, Scrap almost a 1.4, which is pretty crazy. Envoy, Insight, all doing their thing. Scrap, 18, nearly 19,000 damage, compared to, what, 15 is the next highest out of Joe Deceives in the lobby. So, really, really crazy weekend out of Scrap, and why I picked him over Draza for Team of the Week. Then let's talk a bit about the Miami Heretics. As I said, they lost both their matches this week, going from 3-0 to 3-2. And it was definitely an interesting weekend for them because if we look at the matches that they played Seattle Surge and Boston Breach, who are both looked at in the same tier as them currently in the league, in that 5 through 8 slot, I would say. And we kind of saw them. I don't want to say they got exposed because people are calling them bottom team merchants, how all their wins came against bottom teams in the league. I still think this team can be really good, but I think we definitely see that they're not in that top 4 conversation like some people were putting them. If we look at their team stats, medals, KD came way down from like a 1.2 to 1.06. And the team overall seems to have fallen back into a balance that maybe people might have expected from them to start the season. If we look at their records in Hardpoint, Vickle and Lucky, not struggling because 0.9, 0.95s aren't terrible. In SND, I mean, Lucky's still doing really, really well. He had a 0.7, I think, or a 0.6 coming into this weekend. Still at a 0.23, so still really, really good. But Vickle and Journey need to step up in SND. And in Control, they are still really, really good at Control. Their first loss, actually, in Control came this weekend versus the Boston Breach, which is very surprising because Boston are not that great at Control. But overall, this Heretics team, I mean, we can look at the maps individually. They lost in map 5. They almost completed the reverse sweep. They went down 2-0. They came back pretty well against Seattle, but it just wasn't there for them. Vickle had a pretty good weekend overall for the Heretics team. Not the greatest showing versus Boston, honestly. They started out strong with a pretty solid Karachi hardpoint win, but wasn't really all there for them. Surprisingly, Snoopy had a really, really great series. I mean, 96 kills through 4 maps. Amazing. Would have broken 100 if they went to map 5 for sure. Like I said, Vickle kind of did his thing this weekend, but overall, the team was pretty disappointing. A very disappointing weekend out of Metals, who I actually had in the MVP conversation after week 2. Definitely not in that top 3 anymore. But overall, it's going to be interesting to see who Miami plays next because they play Optic and they play LAG. So LAG, a team fighting for top 8 with Miami, and obviously Optic, a top 4 team. Speaking of Optic, let's talk about their one series they played this weekend, which was against the Vegas Legion. They went down early, dominated 250 to 131 in the hardpoint, especially on Skid Row, which was Optic's probably their best hardpoint map. And then they lost the second map 6-3 on Terminal S&D. So very dominant out of Legion to start this series. But as we all know, and as you can see on screen, Optic completes the reverse sweep, 3-0ing them in high-rise control. Pretty solid win, over 50 points on the hardpoint, and then a 6-1 in the Game 5 S&D. This is the second time Legion have been reverse swept this year, and I believe they're the only team to have been reverse swept. I think that's what they said on the broadcast. So unfortunate for Legion. They gotta figure something out there because this is a team that I think can be good, but they're just not showing it. But if we look at the stats for this series, Kenny really, really was the guy in this series. If we look at this map 3, he went double positive to push them into a map 4 and avoid getting swept. I mean, he was just insane. And then map 4 did his thing again with a 1.05. And then in map 5, I mean, the Search and Destroy was 6-1. Everyone dominated. But I mean, Kenny really has been that guy for Optic. Of course, Pred, Dashy have been really good as well. And Shotzi has been making plays, which seems to be his role on the team this year. But Kenny's been that guy for them, in my opinion. Making plays and putting up good numbers. The Optic team looks really good despite almost losing to the Vegas Legion. And then the last specific series I want to talk about here is the Minnesota Rokkr versus the Royal Ravens, the Burger Bowl, as many were calling it, the Battle of the Mid. These teams were looked at as definitely the 2 worst teams coming into this weekend. And we did see Rokkr get their first win of the season, but they swept the Royal Ravens, which was very unexpected. For me, I had Rokkr winning 3-2 in my pick'ems. So I at least got the pick right, but I did not expect it to be in this fashion. Very close hardpoint, not close in Surge and Destroy, and then a close invasion control. But I mean, if we look at the numbers here, Linz was that guy this weekend, which is why he was part of my team of the week. He had an amazing weekend. I think he put up like a 1.3 or a 1.32 overall this weekend, which was just absolutely insane. I mean, he played lights out. Gwyn, on the other hand, as well, the other rookie in the series, played really, really well too, but just no help from his teammates. TJ Halley sort of did his thing. I mean, in map 1, he got crapped on. In map 2, they all got destroyed. And in map 3, he kind of stepped it up to balance it out a little bit. I think we're going to see Ravens make a change before Major 1. Maybe that's a bold statement. I know a lot of fans think that. Maybe, logically speaking, we're not going to see the pros want to do that. But I think GodRx has got to be out. I mean, he's got the worst KD in the league right now at a 0.8. He's not even close to positive in every game mode. He doesn't even have a 0.9 in any game mode. You know, you're through your first 6 series. You have 1 more coming up. And then you're going into the major, definitely in loser's bracket. So I do think or through the first 5 series, my bad. They have 2 more coming up. Let's see who they're playing real quick, I guess, just because I'm curious. They're going to be playing FaZe and Thieves. So FaZe, I mean, chalk it up, right? They're going to lose probably. And then versus my LAT, who are also playing really bad. That could go either way, honestly. But like I said, I think GodRx is probably out. Maybe they move Tej to a flex, bring Real back in and see how that team works. Maybe we see them offer someone like Asim or Temp or, I don't know, a Brack, somebody a spot on this team to fill in that GodRx role because right now he's just not cutting it. And then I want to lastly touch on the 2 undefeated teams and look at their stats. First, the New York Subliners. I mean, they have 2 matches upcoming versus the Ultra and the Breach. So will they stay undefeated? Who knows? Because Ultra, obviously another top 4 team, and Breach, a team that has beaten 2 good teams so far for their 2 wins. But if we look at the stats, everybody playing well. Kismet, a 0.92 overall. He hasn't been the Kismet we saw a lot of the time last year, especially in big moments, but he's still playing really well, enabling his teammates to play really well. So nothing to worry about there. Subliners still also undefeated in Search and Destroy. Just got to really work on their control. They actually are a negative record in control. But Hydra 1.17, Skies 1.16, SIB 1.1. SIB had an insane weekend, by the way. But if we look in Hardpoint, I mean, everything's good there. In Search and Destroy, amazing KDs. Obviously, they are undefeated. And then in Control, nothing too crazy, honestly. I mean, a 1.04 out of Hydra is probably why they're losing more than they're winning in Control. Obviously, 2 of his teammates have negative KDs, but Hydra is the kind of guy you expect a 1.2 out of, and they're only getting that out of Skies. But I wouldn't really worry too much about this team. I think they just keep scrimming and practicing their control. They are going to be fine. And then let's lastly talk about Atlanta FaZe, the other undefeated team, the #1 team in the standings. Who would have guessed it? Going up against Ravens and Optic. The Optic match is their big test. Obviously, if they win that, it'll probably be a 7-0 qualifier for them heading into Major 1. But as we all know, Optic Texas are their kryptonite, but a different team this year. So we will see how that goes. We look at the KDs. aBeZy, the only one negative overall, but barely negative. It's really Simp this year who is taking over that MVP frontrunner spot for FaZe. Although Celium putting up numbers, and Draza really turned it around this weekend. In Hardpoint, everyone's doing their thing. In SND, Draza's still at a 0.86, but he was at a 0.55 coming into this this weekend. So he turned it around. Cell a 1.5. I mean, those SND KDs are insane. They only have one SND loss. They have one map loss in every game mode. So their 3 map losses all came in different game modes. So they're just great at everything, which is insane. And then in Control, everybody's great. I mean, what do you expect out of Atlanta FaZe? This team is top tier, and I don't expect that to change. But yeah, that is the CDL recap for week number 3. Let me know what you think, especially of the team of the week. Is there anything you changed? I think the big change I'm seeing is people would have Draza in there over Scrap, which I think is totally deserving. But overall, good weekend of matches. Like I said, a lot of teams that got dominated, but also some close series. We saw a reverse sweep. So I had a great time. I had a great time watch partying. Thanks again to anyone who was in the watch party at any point throughout the weekend. It means a lot to me that you guys watch the content and enjoy it. And yeah, with all that being said, hopefully I will see you all in the next video.